Lesson 10, the last of the Niyamas. The previous Niyamas, the self-study, is the result of your practice. The last Niyama is a very important element that you need to deal with the consequences of the changes that take place as a result of your yoga practice. The 10th subject, or the 5th Niyama, is Ishvara Pranidhana. Generally, that is translated as surrender. But let's have a look at the meaning of Ishvara Pranidhana. Pranidhana means letting prana flow, let energy flow. You see the word prana, pranidhana, prana adana, letting energy flow. Ishvara means God, or the higher powers. Now, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Or, at least, I don't believe in the God of those established religions that teaches us that there is a man with a gray beard sitting on a cloud, looking over us all day and throwing thunder at us when we commit sins. But life, especially life with yoga, has undeniably shown me that there is an intelligence in the universe of which we are part. There is a logic, there is an ordering, an order. And I think that ancient people clearly recognized that force, that intelligence in the universe, but that unfortunately with time it has been hijacked actually by authorities and turned into the dogmatic religions as we know them today, the established religions, which years ago, centuries ago, started in fact as forms of government to control people, to tax people, to punish people. And that has nothing to do with God or religion or spirituality. Ishvara Pranidhana, letting energy flow towards the higher powers, has been translated as surrender. What does surrender mean? It means acceptance. But Ishvara means the higher powers. So how does that come into play? It means that the higher powers, the consciousness or intelligence that is out there in the universe, has reasons and purposes for presenting us with the lives that we have and everything that occurs in it. Nothing is without reason, and nothing is without purpose. And you apply this especially to those things in life that on the surface are unpleasant, traumatic, cause suffering. Things of which we say, why is this happening to me? Or why is this happening at all? Why all this misery, failure, suffering, pain, trauma? I had a conversation with Thomas before the class started, before most students arrived. And it was a little bit about disasters that happen, always leading to evolution, leading to developments that otherwise would not have occurred. We talked about Corona, how Corona affects people, that it actually leads to a consciousness that many people did not possess before Corona, because they were too busy. And many people now, because either they lost their job or they work from home, they enjoy solitude that they've never experienced in life before, that does in fact have the same effect that yoga has on people. It makes people turn their attention inwards. They reflect on things they never thought about before. They connect with their heart's content. And now you have this phenomenon that the economy is back on track again, or trying to get back on track again. There are many people at home and businesses, they cannot find people to work. Why? They don't want to go back to work. They want to continue to enjoy that connection that they felt. They want to continue to enjoy that solitude that allows them to feel themselves, to be themselves. They don't want to go back into the grind of daily work. 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5, sometimes 6 days a week. They've done that dutifully, the way they were raised since the moment they were born. They were prepared for that. And then COVID came, Corona came. It forced people into an isolation that allowed them to come back to the basis of who they are and what life is about. And the thought of having to go back to daily office work or company work is horrifying to those people. It feels like violence to have to go back to that again. They have to tear themselves out of that condition in which they were allowed to connect with themselves and to be themselves. So, long story short, bad things, if only you know where to look, always have good outcomes. I even dare say, without bad things happening, we don't progress, because we fall into the trap of discomfort that we start to enjoy. When life becomes comfortable, we kind of fall asleep. It is when things happen that we become shaken up, things are being shaken up, and a reset occurs in many ways, including people's consciousness. That is Ishvara Pranidhana, accepting the things as they happen and seeing the good in it rather than focusing on the bad in it. This is what we talked about also when we discussed contentment. Why is this important, and why is this the cherry on the cake as the last of the yamas and the niyamas? It's very important that you know this. Yoga, when done correctly, leads to increased sensitivity and consciousness. And if you don't have the proper insights, the proper guidance, that increased sensitivity and consciousness can lead to emotional instability. It can lead to a sense of victimhood, because you start becoming aware of things you were not aware of before, and as is just human beings have a natural tendency to focus on negative things rather than to see positive things. Whenever things happen, we always tend to be drawn towards the negative aspects. We like to grumble and complain and curse and what have you, and blame. That is why we studied contentment, because we have to put ourselves onto that track where, when confronted with these kind of things, we quickly transform the negative into a positive simply by looking twice. Simply by discovering the potential of the negative event, of the disaster. I have 2 dogs. They were born in a park. They were rounded up, 4 dogs and their mom, four puppies and their mom. They were rounded up after 4 months and brought to a shelter. 2 of them were quickly adopted. They were probably the easiest to handle. The mom was a wild dog, and they had to euthanize her. Then 2 of them were left, but they were very sensitive and not easy to handle. They required a kind of an experienced dog lover, dog owner, to adopt them, because a beginner would really get into trouble with them. But that's exactly what happened. A young couple came to adopt one of them, Pada, but after 4 days, Pada ran away. He was adopted to Seoul Daegu, Seoul National University area. He ran away in the end of November, and he was basically finding his way back to the shelter. I later realized when putting all the dots together. Because when you look at the map, from Seoul Daegu to Yoido to the shelter is one straight line. He was on his way back. He ended up in the park where people started giving him food and snacks and water. So he hung around there for 3 months until I caught him. But the story related to this, and what I try to convey about seeing the good in bad things, is the whole internet blew up. People were very, very angry and rude to this young couple who adopted Pada, calling them names, and you know, the internet people in their anonymity can be very, very cruel. I see a whole different picture. Pada and Babi, they were never meant to be separated. Because since they were born, when puppies are born, you can separate them from their mom and their siblings in the first couple of months. After 2 months approximately. No harm done. Of course, there is some harm, of course, always. But they were together for the first year of their life. They lived in the wild for 4 months. For 6 months, they were together in the shelter. Separation hurt them so much. Pada ran away the moment that he saw an opportunity, and he found his way. He was on his way back to the shelter because he missed Bobby. Now, I was in the first 3 months after I rescued Pada from the park, things started to settle down a little bit, and I developed room to investigate what is going on. So I contacted the shelter, and I wanted to know more about Pada and Babi and their mom and the other puppies. And I asked them to send me photos and videos of all of them. And they sent me photos and videos of only Babi. Many. They bombarded me with photos and videos of Babi. So I asked, don't you have photos of the other siblings and their mom? Then she said, no, only Babi. And Babi is the only one left. She's still in the center, in the shelter. So I said, oh, really? Can I come and see her? The seeing Babi, she was so emaciated, she was about to die, basically. And they told me, Babi is a trouble dog. She doesn't eat anymore. After Pada left, she became depressed. She doesn't eat anymore. She doesn't play with other doggies anymore. They couldn't handle her anymore. And, sometimes they need some treatment. Or nails have to be clipped, or they need to be showered. And because they couldn't handle her, they would drive her into a corner and forcibly catch her, put a muzzle on her, and then do anything that they wanted to do with her. They're very deeply traumatized because of that. What I see is not a troubled dog. I see a dog who wanted to be with Pada. They said it themselves. The moment Pada left, she became depressed, didn't eat anymore, etc. Pada ran away from his adopted house. They were destined to be together. And the universe used me in the center to bring them together again. And this is how it works. Things don't turn out well without the interference of some kind of tragedy taking place. That is how the universe works. That is how the higher powers work. To shake things up, to correct what was wrong. And so Pada and Babi came together again, and they're very happy, and I'm very happy too. I swore never to have a dog anymore, and now I have two. That is also how the universe works, eh? You don't want to have a dog anymore? Here, you have two. Surrender to the Most High means seeing reason and purpose, especially in these kind of things. People tend to see only the surface, only one dimension. But you are a yogi. And that means you develop the ability to see what's below the surface. You develop the ability to see the world three-dimensional, not one-dimensional. You start seeing things that, if you don't pay attention, actually hurt you, lead you to a sense of victimhood. And that is why it is important to have, as a final subject, concluding Yama Niyama, to have a talk about these higher powers and the way that they arrange things in our lives. Buddhism goes out from the point of view that life is a valley of tears. Life is suffering. And religious people have a tendency to approach that in a negative way, in a nihilistic way. How do you call it? They say, well, life is about suffering, so let's just accept the suffering. That is a wrong interpretation. Yoga says no. Suffering is only there because we are ignorant. We must turn our ignorance into insight, into understanding, into the ability to connect the dots, into the ability to see the process of things, like the process of how this history of Pada and Babi has unfolded. if you look at it, you will see that everything in life is like that. If you can see it like that, instead of suffering from past experiences, instead of suffering based on past experiences, you will turn them into something positive. If you are able to see that experiences that we have in the past, painful experiences, traumatic experiences, people treating us badly, failures, that they are in fact designed by the higher powers to get you where you are supposed to be, not where you want to be mentally, because that is indoctrinated by your upbringing and your education and your society. That tells you that you must become a successful business woman or man, or that you have to become a doctor or whatever, business owner. And it is very well possible as a yogi that you pursue one of those kind of things, but only based on your heart's content, because you actually really passionately want to do that. So I can look back at my childhood, which I think was full of tragedy and trauma. I can look back with gratitude because I connected the dots. Because I saw, well, everything that I'm doing today is because of those experiences. If I hadn't had those experiences in the past, in my youth, in my childhood, I would probably be sitting at home now, watching a soccer game and drinking beer or something like that. It is because of those experiences in the past that I started doing things that I didn't believe possible, at least mentally. In my heart I knew, but mentally I never thought possible, or me being capable. But also I started doing things in the same vein that people think you're crazy. Because you start following your heart. People who judge everything based on mental constructions, they will say, no, don't do that. What the hell are you doing? Where are you going with all this? The dogs are an example with that, because I had taken a sabbatical, decided to take a sabbatical. I had no income, and I had vowed never ever to take a dog anymore. Because I'm alone, I'm in a foreign country with no support network in the form of family, friends, and what have you. And I had come at a point that I was actually questioning my being a yoga teacher. I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And the universe thought, here, this is what you're going to do with your life for now. And the moment that we met, there are so many doggies. Even if they are wandering about in the park, they don't touch me. But Pada touched me. There was this spark, enthusiasm, passion. And if I had not followed up on that, I would have had sleepless nights and regret not knowing what happened to that poor dog, because we had a connection. People said, what the hell are you doing taking a dog? You were not going to take a dog anymore in the first place, but now you're not even having an income, and you don't even know what you're going to do next year or the year after that. But I need Pada, and 5 months later Bobby, they inspired me to come back to teaching again. because I had given up honesty. That is why they came. People don't understand that. So when I had Pada, and he finally settled down a little bit, and then I came with the idea that there's this dog community in our park. So everybody knows me and the dog, and I came with the idea to bring Bobby too. They already thought I was crazy, but having the other one too, oh my God, what a disaster. And now they admire them so much, because everything that I teach you, I put into practice to healing them. Because love heals everything. And they are the sweetest dogs in the world, you can't believe it. They look very scary though. Especially Pada. Pada's first impression is he looks like a wolf. He's a little bit smaller, but he looks like a wolf. So some people really panic when they see Pada. But you know, in that dog community, when new people come and they say, oh my God, those two dogs, they should be on a leash, they're so dangerous. Other members of the dog community, you know what they say about Pada? Especially about Pada? He looks scary, but among all the dogs that you see here, he is the most mannered and the nicest dog you will find. He really is. You know what happened yesterday? The police and the fire brigade, they came. Because somebody had called Pada being a dangerous dog that should be muzzled and what have you. So 2 policemen, 8 fire brigade men, and one of those men was carrying a crowbar. So first I asked, why did the fire brigade come? Police is enough. Because they were not on the leash. Why? Yes, because your dog is a dangerous dog. I said, no, look at them. They're the sweetest dog you will ever meet. Then why this crowbar? Are you going to kill my dog with your crowbar? Crazy. I have photos of that. Really crazy. Anyway, that's not part of this story. It just happened yesterday, so I have to get it out there. Ishvara Pranidhana. The universe gives you what you need, not what you want, what you need. And normal people or non-yogi people, they avoid all that. They do what they are told to do. They do what they are trained to do, educated to do, indoctrinated to do. And it's all mental. As a yogi, however, you will more and more follow your heart and accept the things in life that you have to do. Look, to follow your heart, you have to start doing what you feel like doing. And this is a very dangerous proposition, because if you say this to a child, the child will eat pizza and hamburgers all day, play video games all day or watch TV all day, and it won't do any tasks or duties or homework or anything. So this kind of advice to do what you feel like doing doesn't work with children. But as an adult, you know about energy. You know about the story of Yubin, whose father wanted her to be a ski champion. When you are occupied with something that makes you happy, that makes you enthusiastic, that makes you feel passion, your energy goes up. It's the ritual to do things that you feel like doing. But there are many things in life that we don't like doing, but we have to do them anyway. Going to work, taking care of our family, walking the dogs. 3 times a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, rain or shine, hot or cold. But this is what you do as an adult and especially as a yogi. Focus on the things that you're passionate about, that make you enthusiastic. And that includes people, attraction to people. When it comes to relationships, do not start relationships out of need. Do it because there is a spark. Because when you communicate with each other, you feel happiness, you feel enthusiasm. Do not think about, if I'm with that person, then we can have a nice house together, or we can have a good future together materially. Because that always leads to new struggles and conflicts down the road and what have you. But how do you deal with all those tasks that as mature human beings need to be taken care of anyway? You put them into the light of the things that you are passionate about. There are responsibilities. Look, Pada and Babi are a responsibility, but not in a negative way. They give me a reason to wake up in the morning, because I had lost that for a while. And I wake up with a purpose, with a mission. If I would go to a shop and buy a doggy, it would become a burden. Can you see that? But I rescued them. They were miserable, and it was my task, given from higher up, to rescue them, and not only that, to heal them, give them a stable and relatively happy life. I have a graph here that I came across a long time ago. And the title of it is Purpose. Purpose. When you start following your heart, wait, let me first put the graph up a little bit. Purpose, the dot in the middle is purpose. It's 4 overlapping circles. I'm not a Picasso, but I'll do my best. Shouldn't be so difficult. It should be like this. Okay, so you start trying more and more to live from your heart, which is one of the great results of yoga practice, but also one of the great purposes to pursue as a yoga practitioner, as a yogi. That means when you start pursuing things you feel attracted to, you love it. There is a spark, there is an attraction. Something difficult to ignore. It can be a job, it can be a person, it can be a dog or a cat. There is an attraction. On this side, it turns into a passion. Think about people who start working in healthcare. Most people, not all, but most people who end up working in healthcare or teachers in education, they do so in the first place not to earn money, but in the first place they do that out of a passion to help students, children, young adults to manifest. And if you understand this, you very easily make distinction between those who do and those who don't. When you have to go to a hospital and you deal with doctors and nurses, you feel exactly the ones that are there only because of status and money, or those that are there because they actually really want to help. Passion. In case of the dogs, it became a mission. When you do something that you feel attracted to, you become good at it. You become a specialist by default. Let me give you an example. You start a restaurant where you sell food to people. And there are two ways to do it. There's the way that you start a restaurant because it seems the logical thing to do to make money. Many people do. In Korea especially, people are forced into retirement, especially when they work for big companies, the multinational companies, Samsung, they're forced into retirement when they're still 40, 50 years old. So they use their severance pay to start a restaurant. They have no passion for food or people. They start a restaurant just because it seems an easy way to continue being economically active and create an income. Sure enough, that's another story. Many of those go bankrupt within 2 years. But that's another story. If you go to a restaurant that is run like that for those reasons, you never go back there. Why? You feel the atmosphere in the restaurant is not welcoming. You're being rushed to make room for new customers. And the food, maybe it's not bad, but it doesn't touch your heart, doesn't warm your heart, just fills your stomach. Now imagine you're crazy about food, you love cooking, and you love pleasing people with nice food. And now you start a restaurant. You know what happens? People come to your restaurant and they feel welcome. And the food is prepared with heart, meant to please you, not just to fill your stomach. You know what? You will come back. Not only that, you will tell your family and friends, wow, I was in such a nice restaurant. You should try it. That also means if you follow your heart, you may not choose the easy way in life, but you will become a specialist in whatever it is that you chose to do. For me, it is yoga. For other people, it is whatever it is that you do. Based on attraction. It doesn't end there. When it is a mission, it's something the world needs. Think of NGOs, Doctors Without Borders, United Nations Food Program. All passionate people who are following their heart and want to make this world a better place. As a result, it becomes your profession. or vocation. Destiny decided. And as a result of all that, in the end, you are paid for it. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika in chapter 1 says, yoga also, among many other things, leads to material wealth. The restaurant owner who cooks with passion and treats customers with passion, with kindness, welcoming, he doesn't have to worry about earning money. People will come to his restaurant and he will earn money as a result of that. The person who starts a restaurant without passion for food or people soon will start scratching his head and wonder how he can have more customers, because it gets difficult to pay the monthly bills, the rent, the utilities and what have you. And of course personnel is a huge part of the expenses of a restaurant. So you choose the path of the mind. If you compare that in the case of a restaurant, not only is it passionless, but you set yourself up for a lot of worries and fears, anxiety, to eventually go bankrupt anyway after a year or two, struggling and losing that precious money that you got when you were sent into involuntary retirement. Purpose. Live with purpose. Follow your heart. It's not easy, because most of us are in a situation where one thing led to another. That started at birth, education, upbringing, what the government guides us to do. So as a yogi, you have to slowly but certainly make that shift. While you are still with one foot in your old life, living the life that you were taught to live, you slowly but certainly put your foot in the new life, the life of a yogi, of a spiritual person who starts to follow their heart. And I've seen, not only in my situation, but also with students who evolved and started to seriously follow their heart and give it shape also. There is a period, possibly, that you become unnaturally busy. Why? Because temporarily you live two lives at the same time. Because you're still functioning in the old condition, you need to pay the bills. You cannot just quit your job. That would be really foolish if you did that. But in the meantime, you start preparing. Maybe you have to re-educate yourself, go to school, learn something new, something that you're really passionate about. In any case, you have to build towards a new you based on following your heart. And that shift has to be gradual, otherwise you cause a lot of waves that create mayhem in life. A change doesn't come without mayhem in the first place, but you can, of course, you have to mitigate, you have to avoid it as much as you reasonably can, of course. Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender, means accepting things as they are. And the reason for this is very practical. You already know everything is energy. When we don't accept things as they are, we block our energy. When we are frustrated, because we can't accept things as they are, when we're angry, when we're disappointed, when all the emotions that we have are because we're not satisfied, because we can't accept things as they are. And it blocks energy. And when energy is blocked, your crown chakra doesn't function. You have no insight, vision, intuition, which is our most important and most precious characteristics. Surrender means to accept things as they are without labeling them negative in the first place. So that you allow your crown chakra to function so that you can see the process that is at work. Because the moment that your energy is blocked, you have no vision anymore. You have no oversight anymore. But when your energy continues to circulate, which is the whole purpose of this, you have insight and you see the dots connect. You see that although on the surface it looks bad, it looks tragic, actually there is something more to it. It is designed to lead to good things. So it's coming back to energy again. And apart from this aspect, people who live a life in which they're constantly unable to accept things as they are, to surrender, eventually they will get sick. When energy is blocked, in the beginning that has mental repercussions in terms of happiness, in terms of sense of well-being. But in the long term, the symptoms of that energy being blocked become more and more severe, leading to physical symptoms, disease. And in the longer term, the end station is really death. Babi is a good example of that. She was so frustrated and unhappy that her brother was taken away from her. And a dog, you cannot reason with a dog. You cannot teach them yoga or surrender or whatever. She was so unhappy that if I hadn't rescued her, maybe 1 or 2 months later, she would have just perished. She would have just died out of sheer misery. That is what blocked energy does. It's kind of an extreme example, but it's exactly how it works. Time to talk about ego. Thoughts are ego related. I mentioned ego a couple of times and promised you that we would go deeper into the subject, because the word ego is often used in society and we have a certain idea of what it means, but like with many of the things that we discuss, there is much more to it, and it will help you not only to understand ego better, but also to control it better. Ego is Ego is a tendency to identify with ourselves in relation to the outside world. Ego is the reason why we label things and become emotional, react with emotion. Ajita once said that emotion. Emotion is a thought loaded with ego. A thought loaded with ego is what causes emotion. So the thought is an observation, a conclusion, which is neutral. But the moment ego comes into play, it becomes a negative thing. It starts to affect us emotionally. Now, this sounds all very complicated, so I'm, of course, going to give you some practical examples of how this works. I'm Dutch. Now, you say something about Dutch people in a negative way. Dutch pay. All Dutch people are greedy. That's where the expression Dutch pay comes from. Well, actually, we don't have such an expression in the Netherlands. It's an American expression. I can feel offended by something like that. Maybe not a good example. There are countries in the world. In Korea, you have a defamation law. If I insult you, you can go to court and sue me. It's ego. Why am I insulted in the first place? Even if the insult is true. If I am a criminal and you accuse me of a criminal act in public, even though it's true, you can be sued for that. It's pure ego. There are countries in the world that if you say something negative about the royal house, the king, the queen, they throw you in jail. Not for a week or a month, but for years. Ego. And ego can be personal, but it can also be national. Do you watch Formula One? Racing? For years it was Lewis Hamilton, who was at the top 7 times world champion. Well, he's being chased by a Dutch guy now. Can you hear the change in my voice? I'm proud, even though I'm doing nothing. I'm not racing a car. He is racing a car. Last week the race was in Zandvoort in the Netherlands. The whole world media, they were so surprised and impressed by how the Dutch supporters of this guy, Max Verstappen, how they manifested themselves. It was just a long weekend that was completely orange, of course, because that's the national color. And they've never seen so much support and enthusiasm in all those years that Formula One has been taking place. We identify with something. In this case, of course, I'm joking a little bit, and it's not a negative thing here. If you're being thrown in jail because you said something negative about the president, that is, of course, tragic. It's ego. Because of ego. Ego is hurt. But there's another side to the coin where you can be proud of something. And even though it is not even my doing, But I like to see him actually become the next champion. I enjoy seeing him win a race. And of course, because I'm Dutch, I like to see that more than you do. Ego. I've had students walk away from my class and not come back because I made an observation about a certain country. I make an observation about something that is happening in a certain country, and because one of the students is from that country, their ego is triggered. They're angry at me because I said something like that, while it was just a neutral observation. I said something about their country. And then they are offended and they think I'm a bad teacher. And they don't come back, ask for a refund. It's ego. Even though the observation was correct, they feel bad. I, on the other hand, on purpose, I make jokes, not only about myself and my appearance, being bald and having a big crooked nose and what have you, being a stupid Dutch cheesehead. I make jokes about my nationality, about my country too. About the weather, about Dutch people being so grumpy, what have you. It's very liberating because it helps you to avoid ego. Self-mockery has a huge quality. And it is in fact the purpose of comedy is to hold a mirror in front of ourselves. People act ridiculously in comedy to confront us with our own imperfections and foolishness. Mr. Bean. Who doesn't know Mr. Bean? The purpose of Mr. Bean is to confront us with our own foolishness and imperfection, to in fact help us deal with ego. That is the purpose of comedy. So in fact, comedy, as frivolous as it may seem to be, it has a huge, important purpose for mankind, for the population, for the people watching it. I mentioned that issue of people insulting the Queen or the King or the President and being thrown in jail. The other side is in the United States. You have the late night show and the late night show, and then you have another show after that. In the past, in Korea, you could see those programs through the AFKN TV network, America Forces Korea network, which I don't know why, but we can't receive anymore. And they would mock the president on a daily basis. Not only that, they would invite the president to come over, be interviewed, and play along with all the mockery. Look, that is control of ego. Instead of being thrown in jail, just taking it on the chin, and even going along with it through self-mockery. It's hugely liberating, and it's all about energy. Can you see that? If I say something negative about you, or about your name, or about the food that you eat, or about your nationality, it is very likely that you feel bad about that. And it is also natural and normal and human that you feel bad about that. What is important is the next step that you take. How do you act and react upon it? My reaction generally is to go along with the fun. Just add another joke on top of it. And if I don't like you, I will just return in kind and make a joke about your food or your nationality or no. That leads to, that is nasty. I'm just kidding. But either you ignore it or you just pile another joke on top of it to show that you're not being insulted. That you know how to handle these kind of things in a constructive way. Play with everything. Especially with those kind of things. Play with your self-importance, because that is ego. Do you recognize something here? Not only do you save yourself a lot of suffering and misery as a result of your ability to control ego, but it has in fact a very spiritual result, because it allows energy to flow, which will fuel the crown chakra, which is where spirituality is located, and in a practical sense, all those marvelous characteristics, qualities that otherwise do not manifest. Intuition, wisdom, vision, deep insight, oversight. Ishvara Pranidhana is accepting. And it is ego that is often standing in the way of accepting. Especially when it comes to yourself and your past. It becomes difficult when people hurt you to accept that, because it makes you emotional because of ego. If you can overcome that, you can see not only reason, but you can see the positive developments that actually came out of that tragedy. That has led you to be able to do things you otherwise wouldn't have been capable of doing. That it has in fact guided you towards a direction you never expected you would go or dare to go. I often use the process of two steps forward, one step back. Life is a process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. If you can see that too, you realize that misery, suffering, failure, on the surface they look bad and undesirable, but they are in fact the cause for you to be able to make 2 steps forward again. Even moreover, if that failure or tragedy wouldn't have happened, you would not have made those 2 steps forward. You would not have the opportunity to grow further, evolve further. When you understand that, you will be able to overcome ego, take ego out of the process, and simply see it for what it is. It's a good thing, not a bad thing. It is ego that makes us label things bad. It's not easy. As a human being, there's always this first impulse to react as a human being. But you are a yogi, you are alert now, more and more alert. And the moment that you realize what is going on, you step in and you take control of the process. You make yourself see it for what it really is and not based on emotion or ego or the first human natural impulse that we all have. No matter how much yoga we have done, we are all the same. But from now on, the difference will be that you will be able to redirect it. And in that way, everything negative eventually always turns into positive. You believe that? Because in the end, it always will. Any tragedy eventually leads to transformation. A transformation that would not have happened without the tragedy. It is ego that stands in the way. We had this conversation, and it was also about people who died in a war because of COVID, in the process of the earth throughout history being on the move. But in the grand scheme of things, we are basically nothing. We are just a speck of dust. It is because of ego that we think our life to be so important. But in the end, we are all part of this big machine. And machine parts break down. Lives get lost. So we just do our best for as long as we can. And count our blessings, because there are places where human lives are much less worth than, for example, a country like South Korea or the Netherlands. And while you count your blessings, do not passively accept that blessing, but then try to do something good with it. Accept. I mean, adopt a dog, for example. Just kidding. Questions? Ishvara Pranidhana. There is a plan for everybody.
How do you reconcile that plan with everything you experience is due to your karma?
How do you reconcile the plan with?
If there's a kind of universal plan,
Yeah.
what's the point in karma? If there's karma, what's the need for a universal plan? They seem like conflicting systems on the surface.
To restore the condition of paradise again.
So
we have fallen out of paradise.
Let me try to explain what my question means.
Okay.
If something happens to me, it's due to my karma, or it's due to a divine plan. I mean, it's one or the other. How can it be both?
No. When things happen to you, they can be both part of the divine plan and your karma. Because you are disconnected from the divine. And the divine or the higher powers give us misery in the hope that they can put us back on track. In the hope that they can open our eyes. And human beings are so stubborn and ignorant that we don't. And we just think our suffering and all our failing is all, that's just part of life and I have to accept that. And as long as we have that attitude, the universe keeps throwing misery at us, hoping hoping that we will open our eyes. And the tragedy, the real tragedy, is that we fail to see that. And we, even worse, we bathe ourselves, we drown ourselves in our misery because of ego. Because of ego, we identify with that misery. Oh, I'm so pitiful and I'm so miserable and everybody is against me and the whole world is against me and look at all those people who are so happy and I'm not. Your misery is part of the divine plan. It's trying to give you a kick in the butt and say, hey, come on, open your eye. Can't you see? No? Here you have a little bit more misery. You're so stubborn, especially Dutch people are very stubborn. So here you have a little bit more. The divine plan wants pure harmony. It is us that mess everything up. And the more we mess up, the more misery they send us. Can you see that?
I understand what you're saying.
Good question, thank you. And if you can see it that way, you can maybe even smile next time when misery comes onto your path. Because you realize, oh, foolish me, I fell asleep again. I failed to see it again. And let it just be a stimulation to pay attention a little bit better next time. If you understand this, the question is, what is the use of being miserable? Why would I be miserable day by day, drowning in negative memories and interactions with people that are not pleasant and so on, and we do that to ourselves. Of course, subconsciously, it's a human tendency, but yoga says, no, you don't have to accept that anymore. Spirituality does not mean to accept the misery of life. Accept life as it is, but with your misery you must do something, because it has a reason and a purpose that it is happening. We will come back to it again and again, you will see. Karma and ego are huge concepts that are widely misunderstood. Okay, let's have a short break.